Oh, on March 8th, I did a TED talk in TheHague on the Hotelschool by invitation of them. And we've been working about 2.5 months on it, researching, re-editing, rewriting. I gave them the whole script. I did the talk. At the night itself, people from the audience came to me. That was the best TED talk of the night, they said to me. Even the cameraman that officially filmed it said, best TED talk ever. But after some waiting, the TED talk got banned by TED itself and is like a forbidden TED talk. Probably I said something that wasn't allowed. I tried to do my best to really make everything that I say like researchable by science. So you can, if I make sort of, if I say certain things about plants, you can all research them back into old books or new books or scientific investigations, double blind studies, etc., etc. But most probably it's because I talked also about psychedelic plants and mushrooms, and the ritual use of them and the medicinal therapeutic use of them, the research by over 40 universities in the world on these psychedelic substances. And I'm still wondering why the talk got banned, but I'm going to try and redo it a bit here now for you, so you can see what I said and check for yourself if you think it should be banned or should be broadcasted and shared with your friends and family and everybody you know. So, one of the deepest traditions of us humans is the use of mind-altering plants and mushroom sacraments, often in a ceremonial setting, together in groups as a ritual to celebrate something or to reach altered states of consciousness or to get in contact with the divine. These plants are often called entheogens. That means plants that make you get connected to the divine inside yourself or in the nature around you. One of the oldest images we have from this kind of plant or mushroom use is the so-called Tassili rock shaman, an image from before 6,000 before Christ, so over 8,000, maybe 9,000 years old, that depicts a shaman with the bee mask and mushrooms growing out of his body. It's a very famous picture that you can find in my book Plantkracht, for example. The original can be found in Algeria on the Tassili rock paintings. The question is, of course, why are certain plants in the world completely accepted, like coffee, for example, that puts you into a sort of fight or flight state of consciousness? Almost everywhere in the world, people drink coffee as a ritual in the morning, at work, or together with their friends. The origins of coffee are, of course, from the region we now know as Ethiopia. People have been doing this for ages to celebrate things. In Europe, we also open a bottle of wine, when we have something to celebrate, like a feast, somebody's birthday, or we reached a success. We could open a bottle of wine and drink it together. Maybe you had ceremonies with your friends with tea. Just getting together, easy, laid back at 4 p.m., drinking a cup of tea with a bit of milk and sugar if you like, and getting together. It's something very human to get together and consume something. Also normal foods, but also ritual drinks often. Or people would smoke a cigar or something like that, It's something that is in our genes almost, I think, because you see it all over the world. I'm an anthropologist, ethnobotanist, specialized in medicinal and ritual plants, and I've been traveling the world and I've been seeing so many different rituals that people did and do together. For example, I've been in Kwamala-Somutu in the eastern Amazon in Suriname, where people pay each other, not with money, but with feast, with a ritual drink, kasiri. It's a beer made from cassava roots, and it's made by the woman of the house. So the people gather 10 o'clock in the morning together, they work on the land, they plant cassava roots, and in the same time that the people are working, the man, also the woman, But the woman of the house stays home to brew the kasiri, the cassava beer. And she does that by chewing on a piece of root and spitting it in a bucket with chopped cassava and water. And because of the heat and the fermentation during the day, because of the saliva, so the spit of the woman, contains an enzyme that starts the process to make the yeast in the cassava root into sugars and alcohol, you know. Do I say the yeast? I mean the starch, sorry, the starch, to change that into sugar and alcohol. And the interesting thing is that women have played a crucial role all over the world in these ancient ceremonies and rituals. The ancient Egyptians had the cult of Isis, and they had ritual drinks with a plant called the blue lotus, which is the national plant of Egypt. In the British Museum there's still a very beautiful blue lotus cup, also in Egypt myself. I've seen on mummy coffins blue lotuses painted on the third eye area, and I've seen offerings with many blue lotus flowers in ancient Egyptian tombs in Saqqara, for example. This national flower of Egypt gives you an altered state of consciousness if you consume it in the right dose, often under the supervision of women specialist shamans. You know, altered states of consciousness can be reached sober as well, you know, through meditation or through music, but this talk is about plants and the ritual and therapeutic use of these plants. In the times of the Edda, so about 900 years ago, Europe was still covered with one big green forest. And the squirrels could still walk on treetops from northern Europe, from Norway all the way to the south of Spain without ever having to touch the ground. And in these times, women in Europe still played a very important role by making medicinal and ritual beers. In the Edda, the sacred songs of Norway and Northern Europe, we read a story about a woman goddess or demi-goddess that makes beer with the use of the saliva, the spit of a bear, the animal. And maybe the word beer comes from that. You know, the oldest civilization we know that started to brew beer were the Natufians. They lived in Neolithic times, around 9,000 years ago or longer ago, maybe 30,000 years ago. And they were the first civilization that started to brew beers, medicinal and psychotropic beers often. They lived in the area we now know as Palestine, Israel and Jordan. Also the seal of Hammurabi, a clay tablet from the Sumerian culture, talks about beer brewing. In ancient Europe, the temple of Eleusis played a crucial role. The temple of Eleusis was situated 18 kilometers northeast of the city of Athens in Greece. In this temple that existed for 2,200 years, a potion called the Kykion was served by women priestesses. This temple, the temple of Eleusis, was dedicated to the goddess Demeter, goddess of the earth, harvest and beer, and her daughter Persephone, goddess of death and rebirth. During a 9-day festival in autumn, people would drink the Kykion in this temple, and the Kykion contained water, barley, Penelope mint for the taste, and an extract of the ergot mushroom, LSD, a very psychedelic substance extracted from a mushroom. It's a substance that I personally never tried yet, but the philosopher Plato and his teacher Socrates drank it in this temple. Plato, the famous philosopher, called it the most important experience in his life. Also in later times, people that are pretty famous tried LSD and reached visions through it, like the computer nerd Steve Jobs that invented Apple called it also one of the most important experiences in his life. Also, the inventor of the PCR test, Gary Malloff, said that he seriously doubted that he would ever invented the PCR test without LSD, because LSD changed his perception of reality and would make it possible for him to sit on the polymers of the DNA string. Talking about DNA, for example, made me think of an anthropologist, Jeremy Narby, who wrote DNA and the Origins of Knowledge, the Cosmic Serpent. In this book, he talks about people in the Amazon rainforest that drink a psychedelic brew called ayahuasca, that I also never tried myself, but that contains a lot of DMT. That's a substance that's also to be found in our own brain. For example, when you sleep very deeply and in certain dream states, this substance is released. It's called the spirit molecule. And in this book, The Cosmic Serpent, he describes how these people can directly communicate with plants. But maybe that's something for later, but really interesting also to see how different cultures started to work with plants and how they are used therapeutically. That's also, I think, the reason that we in the West are rediscovering these things, because there's at the moment about 40 universities in the world that research, for example, psilocybin, a substance that can be found in the so-called magic mushrooms. Psilocybin in very small dosages can create neurogenesis and synaptogenesis that's confirmed by scientific research if you combine it with a mushroom called lion's mane and vitamin B3 in the right dose and in the right amount of time, in the right setting, it can create neurogenesis, and it helps people to overcome, for example, burnouts or other problems and traumas and pains. It's very interesting that these substances are now coming back to us. So the temple that was once closed is reopened again. For example, this mushroom, the Amanita muscaria, the fly agaric mushroom that has been demonized by the Catholic Church and also the big beer brands. In Lapland, Northern Europe, Finland and Sweden, this mushroom had the same value as a whole reindeer. It was used by the Vikings also to become very fearless and on wars, battles, But in the beginning, the substances that are in this mushroom, ibotenic acid, would make you very active and very focused. Later, this is changed into the body into muskimol, and it makes you very relaxed and gives you very special dream states. With this mushroom, the ancients were able to communicate with the spirit world, with the forefathers. In smaller dosages, for example, you can start to see things very sharp in the forest. I don't recommend you to just put this in your body by yourself. I did it since my age of 5, since I was a small boy in the Belgium Ardennes. My parents had a farm there and in the middle of the forest, and we found these mushrooms, and I already heard about it and I was very curious. So I took very small parts of this, started to eat it, and it's quite interesting. But I highly recommend you, when you want to work with this mushroom, to work with the shaman and under supervision of your own doctor to be careful. Be careful with it, But it's very interesting. What I also wanted to tell you is that because of archaeobotany and archaeochemistry, we can discover what was drunk from these ancient cups of immortality, I have here a very special ancient cup from Greece, a real Greek wine or beer cup from 2,400 years ago. As you can see, it's decorated with 3 little mushrooms. I bought it at Auction House de Zwaan in Amsterdam. You can check it back on their website. And these cups and many other grills were used to drink these special potions in a ceremonial setting. The ancient Egyptians had beautiful cups, as I told you, decorated with the blue lotus. And there's a few more cups also in Pompeii, for example, the ancient Roman city that got devastated by a volcano that, yeah, is still preserved, and these cups can be researched by science now, and we can rediscover what was drunk from these cups. And these cups, in the right set and setting, consumed maybe once in a life or twice in a life, created beatific visions. In Europe, the woman that made the beers, they knew still about these plants and these beatific visions, you know. It were the women that were the brewsters of the beer, you know, until like year 1516, when the Reinheitsgebot was implemented in Europe by Duke Wilhelm. It was only allowed from that time on to make beer with water, barley and hops. Hops is a psychotropic plant that can be found in all beers all around the world. This plant is a libido reducing plant, you know. So it puts down the libido, and it makes you a little bit drowsy, like cannabis, you know, ganja, marijuana. It's a family of that plant. And that plant is now to be found in beers, but before the beers contained many other plants, like for example Myrica gale, in Dutch gagel, this little swamp plant that grows in swamps. This was one of the psychotropic plants, one of the entheogens that was to be found in beers. The woman that brewed the beers, when they were ready making the beer, they would place the broomstick upside down in front of their house, so the man would know, hey, the beer is ready. They brewed these beers in big cauldrons, and they would put on a big pointed black hat oven to be seen on the market. So when they were selling the beer on the market outside, man could see them from a distance. Hey, there's the beer. These symbols of the so-called witch, which were actually called sabia or wise woman or toveresse, were made famous by a Dutch painter in the 16th century called Pieter Bruegel. The image of this can be still found in Amsterdam in the Rijksmuseum. What is also interesting, that the Amanita muscaria mushroom is to be found actually in the Statement of the Human Rights from 1789. The French Declaration of the Human Rights contains in the middle the Phrygian cap. That's the cap of liberty, and that's the symbol of the Amanita muscaria. You can read about it also in the books by Professor Carl Rook from Boston University, who wrote a book called The Mitra Cult, the drug cult that civilized Europe. You know, my power is actually just to bring back the knowledge of these plants, you know, and to make you aware of these medicinal plants. You can find them around your own town, you know, you can find them in the forest. For example, a lot of people nowadays are detoxing, want to detox. You can use stinging needle for it, in Dutch brandnetel. Or there's a beautiful plant called St. John's wort that flowers around the 21st of June. That's an antidepressant. It contains substances or molecules that make you pretty happy, you know. Or saffron, that is from a little flower used in food, also makes you a little bit happy. So there's many flowers, plants and trees that grow around us that can help us medicinally, and also sometimes in the right set and setting, ritually, under supervision of a shaman or a doctor. Remember just that it's the dose that makes a plant a poison or a medicine. For example, the plant foxglove, Digitalis purpurea, it's a plant that works on the heart, you know. Foxglove contains molecules that have a very strong influence on our heart. In the right, very small dose, only to be used under supervision of a doctor, it's a medicine for heart rhythm problems, you know. In higher dose, it can kill you. So it's the dose that decides if it's a plant that's a medicine or a poison. That's very important to remember. And what I wanted to try to tell people during my TED Talk was this, for example. Maybe it got banned because I talked about the dose. Maybe I talked about psychedelics, but I really want to tell you these plants have been used for ages and millennia. I'm a researcher. I've been reading so many books, as you can see here around in my house. about these substances, about these plants, as well medicinal, as well as ritual. And I'm just interested in it, and I want to share my passion for it. I discovered that there's so many things you can do yourself to help yourself, and I always warn people, do it together with your doctor. And I'm very happy that there's so many researchers been doing, and that we are actually now in the midst of a psychedelic renaissance, as they call it. You know, people are rediscovering all these things anymore. They discover it more and more, and they get together again and share this knowledge on festivals, on medicinal and scientific congresses, you know, like gatherings, and we become more and more aware of the power of plants. Thank you very much. My name is Wouter Bijdendijk, and I hope this talk is somehow a bit transforming.